Hey, this is Big Girl Diary. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Evan Rachel Wood. And it's kind of interesting to see her in a different light, that she's not out bashing Marilyn Manson or creating some type of falsehoods, delusions, or whatever it may be. But however, I see a little fear in her face. I think she's scared what's coming down the pike. Now, a couple of months ago, Hollywood, the Writers Guild, people start protesting about not getting paid enough, the paid wages. And if you really were to see the the amount of money that these actors make, it's still a tier system. So, I mean, I can just simply talk about how men get paid, women, and then within the women, then you get into ethnicities and see how much they get paid. It gets crazy. And when people talk about the problems in Hollywood and how they still have biases, stereotypes, and dabble of racism, yes, it's in there too, but that's what I'm not going to talk about. When you see Evan Rachel Wood in this interview, please look at, how can I say, the genuine fear. The genuine fear, because AI, and she admits that AI is not in the future, but it's right now. And it's occurring right now, to where they really don't need writers to write for them anymore, because they have computers to do it. And they're at the point in technology to where they really don't even need actors, because they can have some artists to create something, and they just watch. This really took me for a loop. All right.
With us tonight. So let's just start big picture here, because for a lot of us, I think it's easy to look at this strike and say, oh, that's just Hollywood. We might care if it means seasons of our favorite shows are delayed, but other than that, a lot of people don't necessarily feel connected to this. Why should non-actors care?
Why should we care?
Well, I think there's going to be a bit of a trickle-down effect. I think the entertainment industry and technology have always sort of been in lockstep. And the entertainment industry is, responsible for championing a lot of these technologies and bringing them into the mainstream and introducing them to the general public. And so we sort of become, the test subjects a bit. And a lot of the talks coming up about AI and surrounding the strike, I think we need to pay very close attention to that.
And I would most definitely agree, especially if your bread and butter comes from what she does. She's an actress and also a singer. And now that you have AI that has come to play, as I just simply mentioned earlier, and you could take a look at her face, and she seems a little scared. Because actually, think about the game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and now look at it, what it has become today, to where technology and entertainment is so lifelike. And they had worked hard on the AI to make it seem real life, and then using people's actors' voices, doing voiceovers. That's what she's talking about. Watch, listen, and look at her face. Just look.
And not write this off as this is just rich actors wanting more money, because I think that's a great distraction from a lot of really major points being made in this deal that I think will affect other people in other industries eventually.
So, I mean, the whole premise of Westworld, for all of the fans watching at home, it's centered on this idea of AI gone wrong, right? Do you worry about the future of AI, particularly in this industry?
I absolutely do. And I think we need to stop looking at it as something that's coming and accept it as something that is definitely already here. And I am not an AI expert by any means, but I was on a television show that explored it in great depth. And I was around a lot of tech innovators and experts, and, felt like I got to have a little peek behind the curtain. And what I saw was really frightening. And what scares me about these.
It better be frightening and it better be scary because what companies are trying to do is mitigate lawsuits. If they can have an environment to where they can make money without people suing them because people's behavior, bad behavior, that would be the thing of the past. So why not find a way to not get sued? Just a thought, but just continue listening to her.
Negotiations are the people that are coming to the table have their finger on the pulse of the future. They know what technology is coming. They're invested in it. They knew that streaming was coming, and we can't negotiate for what we don't understand or what we can't foresee. And I think right now we're at a precipice where it's sort of like before we knew what the internet was and before we knew what that was capable of. And so imagine trying to negotiate protections from the internet when you don't even really know what it is or what's coming.
I mean, okay, she's kind of hitting it, but I don't think she gets it. She's going to be out of a job soon. They're not going to need actors. No. They can use some kind of stunt double and have somebody just simply move around in certain ways to get movements and then make artificial people, artificial intelligence, And the technology's here and they can actually, they have holograms of people and now they could create holograms. But listen.
The other people at the table do. And that feels like an unfair advantage.
Let's talk about streaming, which you just mentioned. I mean, when you think of the last actors' strike, I think it was before Blockbuster even existed, much less Blockbuster closing and then also streaming starting. So how has streaming changed the industry? What have you seen over the years?
I've been doing this since I was 4 years old, over 30 years now, and I have seen and felt a major shift in the industry that has been confusing for me in a lot of ways because I owe so much to the industry, but there's a lot of changes and things being made that I don't necessarily agree with. But I think the main thing that a lot of artists have felt from streaming is the fact that there seems to be more exposure and less money, and that's not really computing for a lot of people, and I don't think it would in any business sense. And so there's a lot of questions coming up with that. And
you're being etched out of a job. More streaming and less money for the actors.
I think there's a lot of confusion around the fact that deals were made before we knew that certain things were coming in and that streaming was going to become such a large part of our industry. And now is the time that we need to be on guard and protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're going to get locked into something that could take years and years to undo. And so, I think
it's going to be very hard for them to protect themselves from this, especially as she said, as we really don't understand it. The employers understand it. The employers understand it. The IT people understand it. Big tech understands it. It's just that you are at the point where you are not needed. All these lawsuits are costing these companies a lot of money, and they are trying to say, how can we get rid of the problem? Watch.
I feel artists are very scared and on edge right now. Mm-hmm.
Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, was recently on CNBC and had some pretty strong pushback for these negotiations. Let's listen to what he had to say, and then we'll talk right after.
There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic. And they are adding to a set of challenges that this business is already facing that is, quite frankly, very disruptive.
So they're not being realistic?
No, they're not.
What do you make of that, Evan? And just looking ahead a month, 2, 3 months, how do you see this striking?
He's like, look, it's over. It's over.
Ending.
Well, I mean, I really want to be optimistic about it, but in some ways, this is always what happens when there's a major technological advancement or shift. It's sort of a double-edged sword, and artists are not sitting at the table when these decisions are being made and when people are deciding how this content will be distributed and how it will be received in the world. And artists, after the fact, sort of get corralled into it. We get corralled into streaming, we get corralled into social media, and we're told you can't exist in this industry or have value unless you exist on this platform. And I think this is where people are getting a bit fed up, but I think this is also where he has a point in that we aren't in these conversations. We're not a part of this.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Johnny Depp saw the writing on the wall and he said, well, you know, those of you who want to stay in Hollywood, good luck. Good luck. He goes up to Europe. He starts his own company and he's employing people because he sees what's coming. Now you have people like Amber Heard and Evan Rachel Wood who are holding on to dear life because they don't see what's coming down the pike. They are being etched, moved out, and either you get into streaming, like during the lockdown, during the right, you had people who weren't making any money, artists, and all of a sudden you see up like Eddie Griffin. He wasn't touring, but what he did was he opened up a YouTube channel and he started to tell do comedy. He'll sit into his kitchen and have some people over and start telling jokes or telling stories about what's going on and give his opinion. You have singers who are actually giving live performances from their homes. She doesn't seem to understand where technology is going, and she doesn't seem to understand where she fits in. And that's why there's an issue. That's why they're trying to fight for the jobs. That's why she's saying that there is more streaming but less money for you because you don't see the writing on the wall. But I digress.
And there's so much that we don't know and can't foresee. And so they have an advantage over us. And we have to be extremely careful.
All right, really interesting stuff. Evan Rachel Wood, thank you so much for your insight and your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
You see that? You see that? They're streaming on YouTube. I mean, that right there just says it all. I mean, now it's to the point to where now the news has been hit hard to where now they are on social media, they have YouTube channels, and they are competing with us. And we are kicking their butts. But I thought Evan Rachel Wood I thought Evan Rachel Wood in this interview was quite interesting, and just to see how she looks scared. And other people besides her, like Sigourney Weaver, was scared. But those who see it are maneuvering, and they're, going stage left, while others are still trying to hold on to this Hollywood thing. Hollywood is done. Now people are starting to flock to Atlanta, Georgia. Some people are starting to flock to Europe. Heck, you have Bollywood. You have Nollywood. You have Nigeria, Nollywood. You have Bollywood in India, and now you have U.S. actors going other places because you have these emerging economies to where they're still doing the same thing as they're doing here in the U.S. But now the U.S. is on a different level. They're going some other place with with AI and what they can do with it to cost less money and not get sued. What do you think?